Jinpachi is considered the face of the Blue Lock project, being the director, manager, and creator of the whole thing. His ultimate goal is to create the best striker in the world and a team that can win the World Cup. While we might not know everything about who Ego is, this has always been a concrete fact for readers. But what if I told you that there was a dark secret within Blue Lock that involves people that have been pulling the strings behind everything going on in Blue Lock, that not even Ego himself can control right in front of our faces, and that this is going to have a major impact on the rest of the story? In this video, I'm going to break down my theory about what I think is really going on. So if you enjoy the content, then please consider subscribing. Now, before I discuss these people who I think have been pulling the strings behind the scenes of Blue Lock, to fully understand everything, we first have to discuss one major aspect of Blue Lock that I don't see discussed as much, which is the public. As a reminder, the public has been well aware of the Blue Lock project since the beginning, which makes a lot of sense since 300 teenagers can't just go missing without some eyebrows being raised. But it wasn't until the Blue Lock players went against the U20 Japan team that the Blue Lock project finally got the attention of the world and became a global success overnight. Since it can't be hard to remember that Blue Lock has an entire TV show going on within its story, since we only really get reminders about the public usually before and after matches are done, when we see their excitement about the beginning and conclusion of the match. And I get this since the public aren't really that relevant to the story. Or are they? Since we first see just how much power the public holds when Isagi is given the chance to be put into the FC Boccia match, even though he didn't meet the requirements that were set by the bastard team to play, and was purely put on because, quote, we want to test the skills of our most popular players. Give us Blue Lock's number one, Isagi Yoichi. But this was the very first match that the bastard team was playing, so Isagi already being considered one of the most popular players when he hadn't even played yet meant that Isagi was still garnering attention and popularity from his winning goal in the U20 Japan match. So this shows that the public's opinion holds quite a bit of weight, since due to Isagi being such a popular player from his role in that match, he was able to get the opportunity to bypass the rules that had been put into place just because he was a fan favorite by the people. And this next part that I'm about to state isn't a part of the theory, just an interesting thought I had, but Bachira, Nagi, Baru, and most likely Rin all getting to be the centers of their teams pretty quickly into the Neo-Egoist League arc was very impressive, and I'm not trying to downplay their skills since they are all amazing players, but now part of me questions, were they given these spots so quickly because they are so popular with the public? And there are people behind the scenes that made the most popular Blue Lock players into the centers of their teams because they knew it would do well with the public, since it would be easier to justify this on the Boccia and Manshine team since they have no new Gen 11s on their team, and even for Ubers, since Lorenzo is a defender, they can make Baru the center. But with Kaiser on the bastard team and being a striker, it would have looked odd if Isagi was instantly put as the center of the team over a new Gen 11 striker. But they still found a way to make sure that he played. But that was just food for thought, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about this in the comments. So let's get back to the main theory. So you're probably thinking, well, yeah, in that one instance, Isagi got a bit of a boost because he's popular, but he doesn't get any more as the arc continues, which I would disagree with, since after the Manshine match, we see the rankings, and even though Kunigami scored in the match and Isagi didn't, and we're told that goals are basically the highest way to get a boost, Isagi still got put into the 4th place spot, which I believe is because he's a fan favorite of the public, and even got an interview even though Yukimiya was the one to score the winning goal. Since while yes, Izagi's assist is a big reason why Yukimiya got the goal, it seems odd that while Isagi definitely deserves praise for the things he has done, it seems like a lot for someone that at that point in the story had only done assists. Since you could say that Isagi had showed his value as a midfielder, even getting an offer from the Bastard team to be a midfielder for them. But I mean, Isagi was put into the top 4, meaning he was being treated as almost the same amount of value as the centers of the other teams, alongside Baru, Nagi, and Bachira, and being considered more valuable than Kunigami, who had 2 goals under his belt at this point. So that's why I think the ranking could be influenced by his popularity, since it makes sense that someone like Kunigami, that while he has 2 goals under his belt, he is still a completely new face to the public since he didn't play in the U20 Japan match, and while his talents were able to get him into the top 5, someone like Isagi gets put above him since he's well known by the public. And I believe that's how he got the interview as well, since Yukimiya, who scored the winning goal, wasn't even going to get anything, and the only reason why he got the brand deal was because Chris Prince had asked for him to do it with him, and not because it was personally set up for him by someone in the Blue Lock management. Because we are even told after that Isagi and Nagi's names are the ones that are trending after the match is done, showing just how much of an influence Isagi holds with the public, even though he never scored in the match. But of course, if you think Isagi deserves his top 4 placement spot, I don't blame you, since Manshine was easily his best game so far, and he definitely was the man of the match. But it's hard to deny that Izaki's popularity didn't in any way influence his placement. So the first part of this theory is that I think that the public has a lot more influence than we might think, and that there are people who are heavily taking into consideration what the public has to say when it comes to the Neo-Egoist League. But what does this have to do with ego, and who are these people? Well, someone or several someones has to be pulling strings in the background to make sure that Isagi is getting these amazing opportunities, since an interview doesn't just appear out of nowhere, and someone made it a rule, so Isagi had to play at least once in the Neo-Egoist League arc no matter what, bypassing Noel, Noah, and even Ego himself, who created the whole league. So who was this? Who is this voice that is doing all this? Well, that's not a mystery, since Ego himself tells us that these were the intentions of the owners and sponsors, which brings us into the second part of the theory. Since just like public opinion can greatly impact what happens, so does these owners and sponsors of the Blue Lock project, which I will call the investors for the rest of the video. So basically, while Ego was once the main one in control of Blue Lock, there has been a turning point in the story where Ego now has to answer to a lot more people, mainly being the public and the investors of Blue Lock. Since Ego himself stated that the Blue Lock players are now products and their teams are shops, so I feel like the U20 Japan team lineup could be heavily influenced by the popularity that the Blue Lock players were able to build up during the Neo-Egoist League arc, since we literally see this play out during the bachira match where Isagi was made to play. So this displays that while Ego got control of the U20 Japan team because the Blue Lock 11 won, there are still people that are more powerful than him and can influence who plays and who doesn't, that not even Ego himself can stop, since Ego just has to accept it because that's how the world of pro sports works, which I think could be a part of the promise that the Japan Union chairman was alluding to in a scene with Ego in chapter 210, since this is a scene that happens right as the Ubers versus Bastard match is about to begin. We see the chairman, Ego, and Anri in the general's director room, where the chairman says, "We helped get BLTV started too," which further shows that multiple people helped to make this happen. Then he says, "You made us a promise when we gave the plan the thumbs up, or have you forgotten, Ego?" Then Ego tells him that he knows and tells him once he is satisfied to leave, with the chairman ending the scene looking pleased, calling football a business, while Ego and Anri don't look happy. We are never really given context to what they are discussing, but I believe that it could be about the fact that in order for Ego to do bigger phases in the Blue Lock project like this, he had to give up a lot of his control, like consenting to the TV show, the investors being able to step in when they want, and the public's opinion about the players, influencing who gets to play and where they rank. That's why the U20 Japan match could be seen as a double-edged sword, since this match was able to put Blue Lock on the map as serious players in a system that works, but now has gotten the attention of multiple investors around the world that want to profit off the project. And while this is good for things such as being able to create the Neo-Egoist League because of how much money is being put into the project now, it also means that more people who could care less about football get to have a say in what happens. Since while Ego will make the decisions that create the best talent, these investors will make the decisions that make them the most money. And while something like the Neo-Egoist League arc is mutually benefiting everyone involved, there could be a point in the future where money is chosen over what is best for the Blue Lock players. Since Blue Lock has shown that money-oriented people, such as the chairman of the Japan Football Union, demonstrate this type of behavior perfectly, since he could have cared less about the fact that Japan lost the World Cup in 2018, and as long as he was financially stable, then it didn't matter to him about actually making the U20 Japan team better and more talented, since he is a businessman first and foremost, and only cares about Blue Lock now because he can make money from it. So I'm sure that a lot of these investors that are putting money into Blue Lock just care about making money and can make poor decisions that affect the Blue Lock players, such as the Japan Union chairman did. And while we might not know what these decisions are yet, we know at least one of them heavily involves Izaki, since there are people in the background of Blue Lock that clearly want to push Izaki as much as possible, since he had a huge boost in popularity from getting the winning goal in the U20 Japan match. And that goal might have been even bigger than us readers initially thought, since Izaki is still seeing the benefits of that moment in the Neo-Egoist League arc, from getting to play to having interviews that boost his popularity with the public even more. So basically, to summarize everything, my theory is that the dark secret that Blue Lock is hiding right in front of our faces is that Ego is no longer the one that is in control of Blue Lock, at least not fully. While he is still the creative director and face of the Blue Lock project, there are multiple investors that Ego has to answer to now, and they can influence the project at any moment as they see fit, even if it's against the best interests of the players, as long as they make money through these decisions. Since while yes, Ego did have to answer to the Japan public and the Japan Football Union at times about what he was doing with the 300 players and the Blue Lock project, he was still given a lot of free range to do what he wanted. And it was only when he started to spend too much money on the project, the union finally attempted at shutting it down, so he had to defend his position. But now a lot of this free range that Ego had before is gone, since both the public and the investors are controlling everything more than ever before. So what does this mean for the story? Well, unlike other phases in Blue Lock, such as the first, second, and third selection that purely tested the skills of the players, in the World Cup arc, we are going to see that popularity plays a much bigger role, and it might get top players that we have gotten used to pushed aside in favor of people that the public love the most. Since of course talent will still be important, but the Neo-Egoist League arc is already showing us that Ego is no longer the only one in control, and that his lack of influence could just get worse in the future. Now, for this last part, I wanted to talk about some future things that could potentially happen if any of the things I've been theorizing in this video are true. This is all just pure speculation, but I have a crazy idea that after the Neo-Egoist League arc is done, we could get introduced to a new coach alongside Ego that was appointed by the investors of Blue Lock, since that would actually make sense as a move for them to do, since that would be a person that could keep a closer eye on everything going on in Blue Lock and make sure that Ego is doing things according to them as much as possible. Since we know that Ego could care less about the money aspect of football and is doing this because he loves the sport and is obsessed with creating the #1 striker in the world, and now a team that could win the World Cup. And he only plays along with things such as the show, the merch, and the influence of the investors because he knows that Blue Lock can't exist without money, influence, and popularity. Which is why Ego is even satisfied if Blue Lock lost the U20 Japan match, since now that their talents had been seen on a global level, the project would still live on since they would get picked up by other clubs. So Ego knows how influential something like popularity is, but I'm sure pushed too hard by the investors, especially about who should play in the World Cup, something that is very important to Ego, he won't tolerate this, since that would be very different from them pulling strings in a fictional league. So I could see another character representing this more money-hungry ideology popping up after the league, since we get some of this through the chairman of the Japan Football Union, but a coach would be a much more direct influence since he could directly interact with the players. And this would be farther representation of how Blue Lock would no longer be in the days of where Ego and Anri were the main ones behind the scene, two people who genuinely cared about football, and how going into the World Cup, our characters will have to deal with other aspects such as influence, power, and money. I also wonder if we will get to at least see some of the faces of these investors directly after the Neo-Egoist League arc, since I actually suspect that Ryo's dad of all people might just be one of these investors that are helping to pull the strings in the background, since we know that Ryo's dad heavily disapproved of his son playing football, mostly because he thought that Ryo didn't have a chance of going pro and actually winning the World Cup, since that is a hard accomplishment. But once he saw his son's performance in the U20 Japan match and saw that the Blue Lock 11 win, he most likely saw a business opportunity, which is why the language translation earpieces were provided to the players at the beginning of the arc by his company. So this shows at the bare minimum that Ryo's dad is at least a major sponsor to the Blue Lock project. And it wouldn't be that far-fetched to think that he has invested money into the project, making him an investor as well, and helping to make sure that his son gets good offers. Since, of course, Ryo is extremely talented and well-deserving of high values even without influence, and while his extreme wealth has never been much of a topic in the actual Blue Lock manga, outside of his brief backstory, it is actually a big part of his story in the spin-off novels, and if Blue Lock decided to move in this direction of money and power, then I wouldn't be surprised if this could be a potential future storyline for Ryo, since the author made the choice of making it specifically Ryo's family company to be the creator of the earpieces. So that could mean the author could potentially be planning to have Ryo's father be more of a character in the future. But for now, that's the end of my speculations and this theory video. Let me know what you think about the things that I talked about in this video. Do you believe that the public and investors could be a huge influence in future Blue Lock events, or not so much? And do you think Ego is losing control of the Blue Lock project? I would love to hear all your thoughts and discuss them in the comments. Once again, I had a lot of fun doing this theory video. If you enjoyed this one, then consider watching the one where I theorize why Noel Noah might be the secret villain of Blue Lock, since that video and this one could actually be tied together, since Noel Noah could secretly be working with the investors, and the reason why he gives Isagi so much freedom is partly because he was told to by them, and because it works for his own personal motivations. But if you want to hear what those motivations are, then definitely check out the Noel Noah video. Anyways, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!